The crystal
Please
shattered
forgive
against
me. It was
polished
never my
marble.
intention to hurt you.
Wine bloomed
don't know
across
if I
white
can.
silk like blood across snow.
Hurts
Genevieve
so
Ashford
much.
dropped
I
to her
know.
knees.
Stay with me.
Her hands
feel
found the
faint.
broken glass
Look at
before
me.
her
Help
mind
is coming.
registered the pain. Sharp edges bit into her palms. The ballroom of the Parker House Hotel stretched above her, a cathedral of judgment.
Champagne, mademoiselle?
200 faces
Oui,
stared
monsieur.
down, some curious,
The evening is splendid,
most
is it not?
amused. Clumsy girl, the gentleman said. He did not apologize. Men like Senator Crawford never did. Evie pressed a cloth napkin against the spreading stain. The fabric absorbed nothing. Bordeaux seeped between her fingers, warm and accusing. She had been carrying drinks through the crowd when Crawford stepped backward without looking. The collision was his fault. The blame was hers. It always was. Honestly, Genevieve. Her stepmother's voice cut through the orchestral music like a blade through silk. Must you make a spectacle? Constance Ashford descended the grand staircase with the measured pace of a queen approaching a disappointing subject. Her gown was French silk, the color of midnight. Sapphires glittered at her throat. She had worn mourning for exactly 6 months after father died. Then the jewels came out. Evie kept her head down, blood mixed with wine on her hands. A thin line of crimson traced the base of her thumb. "I apologize, ma'am," she whispered. "Louder, girl. No one can hear your mumbling." Heat climbed Evie's neck. The ballroom had gone quiet. Even the orchestra had stopped mid-phrase. She raised her voice. "I apologize for the disturbance." "Better." Constance reached the bottom step. "Now clean this mess and return to the kitchen. The guests require champagne." Evie gathered the broken glass. Each piece felt like accusation made solid. This was Serafina's engagement party, her stepsister's moment of triumph. The most important families in Boston filled this room. The Cabots, the Lowells, the Forbeses. Women in Worth gowns and men in evening dress all gathered to celebrate Serafina's betrothal to Marcus Winthrop, whose family owned half the textile mills in New England. And here was Evie, 26 years old, serving drinks like hired help. She stood carefully. The napkin fell from her hands, sodden and ruined. Her own dress was 3 years old. The hem had been let down twice. The bodice had been taken in after the winter she could not afford enough food. Gray wool, practical, forgettable, invisible, except when she made mistakes. "Before you go," Constance said. Her voice carried the particular sweetness that meant cruelty was coming. "I believe this is an appropriate moment to address a certain matter." Evie's stomach tightened. Around them, guests shifted closer. Constance never missed an opportunity for an audience. "As you all know, my dear late husband, Richard Ashford, was a man of great generosity." Constance produced a folded document from her reticule. "He left behind a will that distributed his estate with careful consideration." "No, not here, not now." "This document," Constance continued, unfolding the paper with deliberate slowness, "makes clear his final wishes regarding his daughter, Genevieve." The words hit like physical blows. Evie could not move, could not breathe. "I shall read the relevant passage." Constance's voice rang clear across the silent ballroom. "To my daughter Genevieve I leave nothing. She has proven herself incapable of managing even the smallest responsibilities. Her brother Daniel showed promise. She shows only disappointment. Let her make her own way in the world, as I can no longer support her failures." The silence that followed was absolute. Evie felt the blood drain from her face. That was not Father's voice. Father had called her his clever girl. Father had taught her to read by lamplight when Mother was too weak. Father had promised she would never want for anything. But Father was dead 3 years, and the living controlled what the dead had supposedly said. "Of course," Constance added, folding the document. "Richard was a practical man. Genevieve may continue to reside in the household as long as she makes herself useful. But she must understand her position." The crowd murmured. Some nodded. Others looked away. One woman whispered behind her fan. Evie forced herself to stand straight. Her hands bled into her skirt. Wine stained the front of her dress. Blood marked the gray wool darker. She would not cry. Not here. Not where they could see. "Do you understand Genevieve?" Constance asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now clean this mess and fetch the champagne." Evie knelt again, picked up the last shards of crystal. The crowd began to move to talk, to return to celebration. Her humiliation was entertainment consumed and forgotten. The orchestra resumed. Laughter rose like smoke. She gathered the broken glass in her bleeding hands and stood. That was when she saw him. Theodore Bancroft stood near the column at the ballroom's edge. He had been there all evening. He was always there. The estate manager, the man who handled Constance's business affairs, quiet, competent, unremarkable in his dark suit and severe expression. But he was not looking away. His gaze met hers across the ballroom, storm-colored eyes, steady and completely focused. He had witnessed everything: the spilled wine, the public reading, the humiliation. Most men looked through her. Bancroft looked at her. For 3 heartbeats, neither moved. Then he stepped forward. The crowd parted without realizing why. Bancroft moved through the ballroom like water through stone, inevitable and patient. He stopped 3 feet from Constance. "Mrs. Ashford," he said. His voice was quiet. The room went silent anyway. "Mr. Bancroft." Constance's smile was polite ice. "I hope you are enjoying the celebration. I have business to discuss. Surely it can wait until—" "It cannot." Something in his tone made Constance hesitate. Bancroft had managed the Ashford accounts for 2 years. He paid the bills, balanced the books, made the household function. Constance needed him. "Very well," she said. "What business?" Bancroft turned. His steel-gray stare found Evie again. He crossed the remaining distance in 2 strides. Then, with movements so deliberate they seemed choreographed, he lowered himself to one knee. The ballroom froze. Evie stared. Her mind could not process what her eyes saw. Theodore Bancroft, the most practical man in Boston, knelt on marble in the center of 200 witnesses. "Miss Ashford," he said. His voice was calm, certain, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The question hung in the air like smoke after cannon fire. Evie could not speak, could not think. Around them, the silence had weight and texture. Constance's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Bancroft," she managed. "What? I am asking Miss Ashford to marry me." He did not look away from Evie. "I hope she will accept." 200 people held their breath as one. Evie looked down at the man kneeling before her. She had spoken perhaps 20 words to Theodore Bancroft in 2 years. He came to the house once weekly to review accounts with Constance. He was polite, distant, efficient. She knew nothing about him except that he kept perfect ledgers and never smiled. Now he knelt before her with broken glass glittering on the floor around them both. The answer rose from some deep place she did not know existed. Yes. The word was barely a whisper, but in that cathedral silence it carried. Bancroft stood in a single fluid motion. He produced a handkerchief from his pocket and wrapped it around Evie's bleeding hand with practiced efficiency. "Then we should make arrangements immediately," he said. "Immediately." Constance found her voice. It came out strangled. "This is absurd. Bancroft, you cannot possibly—" "I can." He finally looked at Constance. "And I will." "On whose authority?" "My own." Something passed between them. Some understanding Evie could not read. Constance's face went from shock to rage to calculation in the space of 3 seconds. "I see," she said quietly. "How very unexpected." "Life often is." Bancroft offered his arm to Evie. "Miss Ashford, if you would accompany me." Evie's hand found his sleeve. The fabric was fine wool, expensive, not the cloth of an estate manager's salary. They walked through the crowd together. Guests parted. Whispers followed like wind through wheat. At the ballroom door, Bancroft paused. "Mrs. Ashford," he called back, "I resign my position effective immediately. Send final accounts to my residence. Good evening." Then they were through the doors, down the corridor, out into the cold March night. A carriage waited at the curb, black lacquer, 4 horses. A driver in dark livery. Bancroft handed Evie inside with the same efficiency he had shown wrapping her wounded hand. The door closed. The carriage moved. Only then did Evie find her voice. "What did you just do?" Bancroft sat across from her in the dim interior. Gaslight from passing street lamps painted his face in alternating shadow and gold. "I asked you to marry me," he said. "You accepted." "But why?" For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. Something gentler and more complicated. "Your brother Daniel saved my life at Gettysburg," he said quietly. "Carried me 2 miles through enemy fire after I took a bullet through the shoulder. Stayed with me through field surgery. Made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would look after his sister. The mention of Daniel hit like a fist to the stomach. Evie closed her eyes. He spoke of you constantly, Bancroft continued, called you Evie, said you were the only person in the world worth fighting for. His voice dropped lower. 3 days before he died, he made me swear an oath. Find Evie, protect her, keep her safe from Constance. Evie opened her eyes. You knew about Constance. I suspected. Daniel spoke of her cruelty, but I needed proof. He pulled a folded letter from his coat. This arrived this morning. Daniel wrote it the night before the battle where he died. He gave it to the chaplain with the instructions to mail it if he fell. Evie took the letter with trembling hands. The paper was thin, travel-stained. Daniel's handwriting covered both sides. Read it later, Bancroft said, when you have privacy. But know this, Miss Ashford, I did not propose tonight out of obligation. Then why? He looked at her directly. In the shifting light, those gray eyes held something that made her breath catch. Because I saw your daguerreotype portrait in early 1863, before Gettysburg. Daniel carried it in his breast pocket through every battle, showed it to me the night we met at winter camp, said, "This is my sister. Isn't she remarkable?" Bancroft's voice roughened slightly. I looked at that portrait, at the young woman with intelligent eyes and a stubborn chin, and I realized something very inconvenient. Evie could not breathe. What? That the woman in that portrait was the most extraordinary person I had never met. The carriage turned a corner. Evie gripped the letter tighter. You have been in love with a photograph, she said, not a person. I fell in love with a photograph in the winter of 1863, he corrected. I stayed in love when I met the person years later and found her even more remarkable than her picture suggested. That has been 7 years of waiting, Miss Ashford. 7 years of wondering if you were real or merely hope made solid. You do not know me. I know you spent 2 years enduring Constance's cruelty without complaint. I know you sold your mother's jewelry to buy medicine for the cook's daughter when she fell ill. I know you read 3 books a week from the lending library and prefer philosophy to novels. I know you are loyal and brave and far too kind for your own good. Evie stared. You have been watching me. I have been protecting you as I promised Daniel I would. He leaned forward slightly. But this proposal is not about duty, Miss Ashford. It is about choice. My choice, and now yours. You said yes in that ballroom, but you may withdraw that answer. I will provide a settlement generous enough for you to live independently. You need never see Constance again. The choice is yours. The carriage slowed. Through the window, Evie saw an enormous house. No, not a house. A mansion. 4 stories of red brick and white marble. Windows blazing with light. Columns framing a doorway that could swallow a carriage. Where are we? She whispered. My home, Bancroft said simply. The door opened. A footman in pristine livery offered his hand. Evie descended in a daze. The mansion loomed before her. Gas lamps lined the drive. Gardens stretched into darkness on either side. This was not an estate manager's residence. This was wealth on a scale that made Constance's pretensions look like poverty. Bancroft offered his arm again. Come inside. You should rest. We can discuss the details tomorrow. What details? The wedding. He guided her toward the entrance. I have obtained a special license. We can marry tomorrow afternoon at Trinity Church if you are willing. Tomorrow, her voice came out faint. Constance will contest the engagement if given time. Better to present her with an accomplished fact. He paused at the door. But again, the choice is entirely yours. I will not force you. Evie looked back at the street, at the city spreading dark and cold beyond the mansion's light. Out there was Constance, the Ashford house, a life of servitude and humiliation. Here was a stranger who claimed to have loved her since the war, who had just rescued her in front of Boston society, who offered marriage and protection and a way out. It was madness. It was salvation. Tomorrow afternoon, she said, Trinity Church. Something flickered in Bancroft's eyes. Relief, joy, both. Tomorrow afternoon, he agreed. The door opened. Warmth spilled out. A gray-haired woman in a housekeeper's black dress appeared. Mrs. Hale, Bancroft said, this is Miss Ashford. She will be staying in the blue room tonight. Please see that she has everything she needs. Of course, sir. Mrs. Hale's eyes were kind. Welcome, Miss Ashford. Evie stepped into the entrance hall. Marble floors, a staircase that curved like a swan's neck, paintings in gilt frames. chandelier crystal catching light like captured stars. She turned back to Bancroft. He stood in the doorway watching her with an expression she could not read. "Who are you?" she asked. "Tomorrow," he said quietly. "I will tell you everything tomorrow. Tonight rest. You are safe here." Mrs. Hale touched Evie's elbow gently. "Come, dear, let me show you to your room." Evie followed the housekeeper up the grand staircase. At the landing, she looked back. Bancroft still stood in the entrance hall. He raised one hand in a small gesture. Not quite a wave, an acknowledgement, a promise. The blue room was larger than any space Evie had ever occupied. A four-poster bed dominated the center. Silk curtains, a fireplace where flames danced gold and orange, windows overlooking gardens she could not yet see. Mrs. Hale moved efficiently, turning down the bed, lighting additional lamps. "There is a bathing room through that door," she said. "Hot water is ready. I will bring up a nightdress and see about your hand. That needs proper bandaging." "Thank you," Evie whispered. Mrs. Hale paused at the door. "He is a good man, Miss Ashford. I have worked for Mr. Bancroft for 15 years. I have never known him to be anything but honorable." Then she was gone. Evie stood alone in the blue room. Her hands had stopped bleeding. The wine stain on her dress had dried to a dull brown. She could still hear Constance's voice reading Father's supposed final words. Nothing. Incapable. Disappointment. She pulled Daniel's letter from her pocket. The paper crackled as she unfolded it. The handwriting was Daniel's. Strong, clear, achingly familiar. "Dearest Evie, if you are reading this, I am gone. I am sorry. I wanted to come home, wanted to see you married and happy and free. But if fate has other plans, know this. Theodore Bancroft is a man I would trust with my life. I am trusting him with something more precious. You. He will tell you he is honoring a promise. This is true, but I know something else. I have seen the way he looks at your photograph, the way his voice changes when I speak your name. He loves you, Evie, has loved you since that winter night in '63 when I showed him your portrait by firelight. I made him promise to wait, to know you properly before declaring himself. But I also made him promise that if Constance ever threatened you, he would act immediately. Trust him. He has waited since the war began to meet you. He will wait as long as you need. You are brave and brilliant and kind. You deserve every happiness this world can offer. Theo will give it to you if you let him. I love you, little sister. I always will, even from wherever I have gone. Your brother Daniel." The letter blurred. Evie sank onto the edge of the enormous bed. Tears came finally, silent, hot. 7 years of grief and fear and loneliness pouring out in the safe darkness of a stranger's guest room. No, not a stranger, Daniel's friend, her brother's final gift, Theodore Bancroft. She cried until the tears stopped, until exhaustion dragged her down into sleep, still wearing her stained gray dress. Until the night deepened and the city grew quiet, and somewhere in the mansion below, a man who had waited since the war stood at a window and looked out at stars Daniel would never see again. Tomorrow there would be a wedding. Tomorrow there would be revelations and choices in a future unwritten. Tonight there was only rest. And for the first time in 3 years, Genevieve Ashford slept without fear. Morning came cold and bright. Evie woke to sunlight streaming through windows she did not recognize. For 3 confused seconds, she thought herself back in her small room at the Ashford house. Then memory returned. The engagement party. The broken glass. Bancroft kneeling. She sat up. Someone had removed her shoes during the night. A quilt had been draped over her. The stained gray dress was gone, replaced by a nightgown of fine linen. A knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Evie called. Mrs. Hale entered carrying a breakfast tray. Behind her came 2 maids with a copper bathtub and steaming water. "Good morning, Miss Ashford," the housekeeper said. "Mr. Bancroft thought you might prefer to breakfast in your room this morning. The ceremony is at 2 o'clock. That gives us time to prepare." "Prepare," Miss Hale's smile was gentle. "A bride needs a proper dress, dear." The next hours passed in a blur. The bath was heaven. Evie soaked until the water cooled and her skin pruned. The maids helped her into undergarments finer than anything she had owned. Then came the dress. It was ivory silk, simple in design but exquisite in execution. The bodice fit perfectly. The skirt fell in elegant folds. A veil of Brussels lace waited on the bed. "How," Evie breathed. Mr. Bancroft commissioned it 6 months ago, Mrs. Hale said quietly. Had your measurements taken from your old dresses when they went to the laundress. 6 months. He had been planning this for 6 months. At 1:30, a carriage arrived. Mrs. Hale accompanied Evie on the short ride to Trinity Church. The building rose graceful and solid on Copley Square. Gothic revival, stone and stained glass. Bancroft waited inside. He wore a dark suit, white shirt, simple cravat, but the quality of the tailoring was unmistakable. This was not estate manager clothing. This was wealth worn quietly. The church was empty except for two witnesses Mrs. Hale had arranged. The vicar waited at the altar. Bancroft offered his arm. They walked down the aisle together. The ceremony was brief. Traditional words spoken in a shaft of colored sunlight. Evie's voice trembled on her vows. Bancroft's remained steady. With this ring, I thee wed. The gold band slid onto her finger. Warm, real, a promise made solid. You may kiss your bride. Bancroft leaned in. The kiss was gentle, chaste, a brush of lips that somehow held 7 years of waiting. When he pulled back, his eyes held a question. Evie nodded. Whatever came next, they would face it. The vicar pronounced them married. Mrs. Hale smiled. The witnesses signed the register. It was done. Genevieve Ashford was now Genevieve Bancroft. Outside, the carriage waited, but Bancroft did not hand her inside immediately. Before we return home, he said, there is something you should know. Here it comes, Evie thought. The revelation. I have not been entirely truthful about my circumstances, Bancroft continued. The position of estate manager was a fiction, a way to stay close to you without raising Constance's suspicions. Then who are you? He drew a breath. My full name is Theodore James Bancroft III. My family owns the Boston and Western Railroad, among other enterprises. The words took a moment to penetrate. When they did, Evie's knees went weak. The Boston and Western. The largest railroad in New England. Thousands of miles of track, dozens of stations, freight contracts with every major industry in the region. You are a railroad baron, she whispered. I am a man who loves you, he corrected. The railroad is simply how I make my living. You pretended to be an estate manager. I needed to be near you to make certain Constance did not harm you while I gathered evidence. His jaw tightened. Your father's will was forged. Every word Constance read last night was a lie. The ground seemed to tilt. What? Your father left you $15,000 in trust. Constance stole it through forged signatures. I have been documenting the theft for 2 years. He paused. But that is not the worst of her crimes. Evie gripped his arm. What do you mean? Bancroft's expression darkened. During the war, Constance passed Union intelligence to Confederate agents, troop movements, supply routes, information that got good men killed. His voice went cold. Daniel suspected, tried to warn authorities, but he died before he could prove it. The world spun. Constance is a traitor, she was. The war is over, but the crime remains. He pulled a telegram from his pocket. This arrived an hour before the ceremony. Federal investigators have reopened the case based on evidence I provided. As of this morning, Constance Ashford is wanted for treason, fraud, and attempted murder. Attempted murder. She hired men to kill us last night. They were arrested before they could act. They have confessed, named her as their employer. Evie could not speak, could not process. Constance was not just a thief. She was a spy, a traitor, a murderer. Why did you not tell me before? She finally managed. Because I needed you safe first. Constance is dangerous when cornered. She has already attempted to have the marriage annulled. He took her hands. What comes next will be public and unpleasant. She will fight. She will lie. She will attempt to destroy both our reputations. He met her eyes. But if you stand with me, we will win, and she will never hurt anyone again. The choice was simple, terrifying, necessary. What do we do? Bancroft's smile was not pleasant. It was the smile of a man who had waited patiently for the perfect moment to strike. Tomorrow night, Governor Bullock is hosting a ball. Every important family in Boston will attend. Constance will be there believing herself untouchable. His eyes held cold promise. We will prove her wrong, publicly, permanently, with witnesses she cannot intimidate. How? By presenting evidence of her crimes before witnesses, by forcing her to confess, by ensuring justice is served where it cannot be hidden or bought. He squeezed her hands gently. But I need you willing. This will be difficult. Evie thought of Daniel, of men who died because of Constance's betrayal, of 7 years of patient waiting. I am willing, she said. Then we prepare. Bancroft handed her into the carriage. Tomorrow night, treason and theft will meet justice. Together. As the carriage rolled toward Bancroft Manor, Evie looked down at the gold band on her finger. 24 hours ago, she had been a servant in her own home. Now she was a railroad baron's wife, and tomorrow she would help bring down a traitor. The war had just begun. The morning after the wedding, Evie woke to find her husband gone. A note rested on the pillow beside her. The handwriting was precise. Efficient. Federal investigators arrive at 9. Business requires my attention until noon. Mrs. Hale will attend you. Lunch at 1. We have much to discuss. Evie folded the note. Through the bedroom window, Boston spread gray and gold under April clouds. Somewhere in that city, Constance was planning, scheming. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, Evie felt something sharp and unfamiliar. Anticipation. Mrs. Hale arrived with breakfast and a woman whose measuring tape moved with military efficiency. The seamstress circled Evie like a general surveying terrain. For tomorrow night, Mrs. Hale explained, the governor's ball requires appropriate attire. The seamstress took measurements in silence. Waist bust, shoulder hem. When she finished, she nodded once and departed. What happens tomorrow night? Evie asked. Mrs. Hale's expression was carefully neutral. Mr. Bancroft will explain, but I suggest you eat well today and rest when you can. Tomorrow will be demanding. She left Evie alone with toast and tea she could not taste. At 1 o'clock precisely, a maid knocked. Mr. Bancroft requests your presence in the library, ma'am. The library occupied the entire west wing of the mansion's second floor. Floor-to-ceiling shelves held thousands of volumes. Leather spines gleamed in afternoon light. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to stand in. Theo stood at the window. He wore different clothes than yesterday. Simpler. A white shirt with sleeves rolled to the elbows. Dark trousers. No jacket. He looked younger without the formal armor of society dress. He turned when she entered. Good afternoon, Mrs. Bancroft. The name still felt foreign. Evie crossed to the desk where papers lay scattered in careful disorder. You promised explanations, she said. I did. Theo gestured to a chair. Sit. This will take time. She sat. He remained standing, pacing, the restless energy of a man accustomed to action, forced into stillness. Your father's original will left you $15,000, he began. The money was placed in trust, managed by the First National Bank. The terms specified you would receive full control at age 25 or upon marriage. I turned 25 last year, Evie said quietly. I know. Constance knew too, which is why she acted quickly. He pulled a document from the desk. This is a transfer order, dated 6 months before your birthday. It moves the entire trust fund into Constance's name. Evie took the paper. The signatures looked authentic. Her father's sprawling hand. The bank president's careful script. Forged, Theo said. Both signatures. I have handwriting samples that prove it. But more importantly, I have a witness. Who? Your stepsister. The words hung in the air like smoke. Serafina helped Constance. Evie's voice came out flat. Serafina was coerced, threatened. Constance told her that unless she witnessed the forged documents, she would be disinherited entirely. Theo's jaw tightened. Your stepsister is not blameless, but she is not the villain here. Evie set the paper down. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. What proof do you have? Theo smiled. It was the expression of a man who had planned every move 10 steps ahead. Serafina came to me 3 months ago, confessed everything. I have been building the case since then, gathering evidence, securing witnesses. He pulled more documents from a drawer. Bank statements showing Constance's spending, invoices for jewelry, gowns, a carriage, all purchased with your inheritance. The papers spread across the desk like a map of theft. Evie picked up an invoice, a sapphire necklace, $4,000. She had sold her mother's locket for $8 to buy medicine for the cook's daughter. Rage burned cold and clean. You said treason, she said quietly. Explain that. Theo's expression hardened. During the war, Constance passed Union intelligence to Confederate operatives. She had access through your father's position as military supplier. Troop movements, artillery placements, supply schedules. He pulled another folder from the desk, opened it. Inside were letters, coded messages, receipts for payment. Daniel discovered evidence in 1862, tried to report it through proper channels, but Constance learned of his investigation. That is why she arranged your father's death. Evie's breath stopped. She killed Father Poit. Arsenic, slow poisoning disguised as weak heart. Daniel suspected but could never prove it. He was killed at Gettysburg before he could finish gathering evidence. Theo's voice went hard. I have spent 7 years finishing what your brother started. How did you get these documents? Constance kept them, hidden in her study, insurance against her Confederate contacts if they ever turned on her. His mouth twisted. She did not know I was working as her estate manager specifically to gain access to that room. Evie stood, walked to the window. Below the gardens stretched green and precise. Servants moved along paths like pieces on a chessboard. You have been planning this for years, she said, since Daniel's death, since I read his final letter describing what Constance had done, what she was still doing. Theo moved to stand beside her. I could not let her destroy you the way she destroyed your father, your brother. So you became her employee. I purchased a failing accounting firm and offered my services at rates she could not refuse. For 2 years, I managed her finances, documented every theft, every forged signature, every treasonous contact. Evie turned to face him. You sacrificed 2 years of your life for a stranger. Not a stranger, Daniel's sister, the woman in the daguerreotype who haunted my dreams through a war. His gaze held hers, and not a sacrifice. Justice delayed is not justice denied. I was willing to wait. The words settled between them. Justice, not revenge. The distinction mattered. What do you need from me? Evie asked. Courage. Tomorrow night will be brutal. Constance will say terrible things. She will try to destroy your reputation before we can destroy hers. She has an ally, Senator William Ashford, a distant cousin of your father's. He helped her pass intelligence during the war. He will defend her. I have endured her cruelty for 3 years. I can endure one more night. This will be different. This will be public. And Senator Ashford is powerful, connected. Evie thought of the engagement party, the broken glass. The forged will read before 200 witnesses. Good, she said. Let the whole city watch them both fall. Theo's expression shifted, something that might have been admiration, or perhaps recognition. A fellow warrior acknowledging another. Then we prepare. Come, I want to show you something. He led her through the mansion, down corridors lined with paintings, through a conservatory where orchids bloomed in precise rows, to a door she had not noticed before. The room beyond was an office, but not the decorative kind wealthy men maintained for show. This was a working space, desk covered in papers, maps on the walls, a telegraph machine in the corner. This is where I manage the railroad, Theo said, and other enterprises. He pulled a leather portfolio from a locked drawer. Inside were more documents, but these were different. Property deeds, stock certificates, banknotes. Your inheritance was $15,000, Theo said. Constance stole it, spent it. That money is gone and cannot be recovered in full. Evie's heart sank. So there would be no restitution after all, just justice without compensation. However, Theo continued, when we married yesterday, you became half owner of everything I possess. The railroad, the investments, this house. He met her eyes. You are not dependent on recovered inheritance, Evie. You are a wealthy woman in your own right. The implications took time to process. Half owner of a railroad empire. That is too much, she whispered. It is the law. A wife has rights to her husband's property. His voice softened. And I want you to have security, independence, so that whatever choice you make about this marriage, you make it freely. What choice? We married quickly, out of necessity. I have loved you since the winter of 1863. You have known me for 2 days. He set the portfolio aside. I'm offering you a bargain. 1 year, live as my wife. Let me court you properly. If at the end of that year you wish to leave, I will grant you a divorce and a settlement generous enough to live however you choose. Evie stared at him. You would let me leave? I would hate it, but yes, I want you willing, not trapped. The honesty in his voice was startling. Most men would demand, command. Theo offered choice. "And if I stay?" she asked. Something flickered in his eyes, hope, carefully controlled but present. "Then I will spend the rest of my life proving you made the right decision." Before Evie could respond, footsteps sounded in the corridor. Mrs. Hale appeared in the doorway. "Sir, there is a visitor, Miss Seraphina Ashford. She says it is urgent." Theo and Evie exchanged glances. "Show her to the drawing room," Theo said. "We will be there momentarily." When Mrs. Hale left, he turned to Evie. "Are you ready to face your stepsister?" Evie straightened her spine. "Yes." They found Seraphina in the drawing room, perched on the edge of a chair like a bird ready to fly. She wore lavender silk. Her golden hair was perfectly arranged, but her eyes were red. She stood when they entered. "Evie," she breathed. I heard about the marriage. Mother is furious." "I imagine she is," Evie said coolly. Seraphina flinched. "You have every right to hate me." "I do not hate you, Seraphina. I pity you." "I deserve worse." Seraphina's hands twisted together. "I witnessed the forged documents. I knew Mother was stealing from you. And I said nothing." "Why have you come?" Theo's voice was flat, professional. "To warn you. Mother knows you have evidence. She and Senator Ashford hired men to retrieve it. They are coming tonight." The words fell like stones in still water. "How many men?" Theo asked. "I do not know, but Mother spoke of violence, of burning papers, of," Seraphina's voice broke, "of removing obstacles." Evie's blood went cold. Obstacles meant people, meant her, meant Theo. Theo's expression did not change. "Thank you for the warning. You should leave. Return to your engagement party plans. Act as though nothing has changed." "I cannot keep pretending," Seraphina said. "Tomorrow night at the governor's ball, I will testify. I will tell everyone what Mother did, what Senator Ashford helped her do." "That will destroy your engagement," Evie said quietly. "Marcus Winthrop will not marry a woman connected to scandal." "I know," Seraphina met her eyes. "But it is the right thing to do. Daniel would have wanted me to do the right thing." The mention of their brother hung between the stepsisters. Evie saw perhaps for the first time that Seraphina had loved Daniel too, had mourned him, had been shaped by his absence just as Evie had. "Go," Evie said gently. "Be safe. We will see you tomorrow." When Seraphina left, Theo moved immediately, locking doors, closing shutters. "You believe her?" Evie asked. "Yes, Constance is desperate, and Senator Ashford has everything to lose if the treason charges are proven. Desperate people take desperate measures." He pulled a bell cord. A footman appeared instantly. "Send for Mr. Walsh, my lawyer. Tell him to bring the documents to the bank vault immediately. Then alert the staff. No one enters or leaves the house after dark." The footman departed at a run. "What can I do?" Evie asked. Theo looked at her. For the first time since the proposal, she saw genuine worry in his eyes. "Stay close to me. If men come, they will come violently. I need you safe. I will not hide while you fight. Evie, I have been powerless for 3 years. I will not be powerless now." Something in her voice made him pause, then nod. "The library. There are weapons there. Come." They returned to the library at a run. Theo unlocked a cabinet concealed behind a row of law books. Inside were things Evie had never seen in a gentleman's home. Pistols, a rifle, and a sword cane. Theo pulled out the cane, twisted the handle. A blade whispered free. 3 feet of Toledo steel. "Can you shoot?" he asked. "No." "Then take this." He handed her a small knife. "If someone grabs you, aim for the eyes or throat. Do not hesitate." Evie took the blade. It was heavier than it looked. "You think it will come to that?" "I hope not, but hope is not a strategy." He armed himself with the sword cane and a pistol tucked into his belt. Together they waited as afternoon darkened toward evening. The attack came at midnight. Evie had been drowsing in the library chair when glass shattered downstairs. She jerked awake. Theo was already moving, the sword cane in hand. "Stay behind me," he ordered. They reached the entrance hall as 3 men climbed through the broken window. Large men, rough clothes, cudgels and knives gleamed in lamplight. The leader saw Theo and grinned. "Nothing personal, Governor, just business. Senator's orders." "Leave now," Theo said quietly. "You will not like what happens if you stay." The man laughed, his companions spread out flanking. Ashford pays good coin, says there's papers need destroying, and maybe a couple bodies to go with them. Mrs. Bancroft, Theo corrected, and you will address my wife with respect. Then he moved. The sword cane flashed. The leader's cudgel clattered to the floor, his hands spurting blood. Theo spun reverse the blade, drove the pommel into the second man's solar plexus. The thug folded like paper. The third man lunged at Evie. She did not think, just reacted, stepped aside, let his momentum carry him past, brought the knife down hard into his shoulder. He screamed, stumbled. Theo was there instantly, sword point at the man's throat. On the ground, all of you. The wounded men complied. Blood pooled on marble. Footsteps pounded. The staff arrived armed with fire pokers and kitchen knives. Within minutes, the attackers were bound and the constabulary summoned. Theo turned to Evie. His gaze scanned her, quickly checking for injury. Are you hurt? No. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. You fine. He pulled her close. For one moment, they stood together in the wreckage of the entrance hall. His heart beat fast against her cheek. Then he stepped back, became businesslike again. We cannot stay here tonight. Constance and Ashford will send more men if these fail to report. He looked at Mrs. Hale. Pack essentials. We leave in 20 minutes. Where will you go? The housekeeper asked. The Tremont Hotel, public, well lit, witnesses everywhere. He turned to Evie. Can you be ready? Yes. They fled into the night like fugitives. The carriage rattled through empty streets. Evie watched the mansion disappear behind them, her new home violated, her safety shattered. But she was not afraid. The Tremont Hotel rose 6 stories above Tremont Street. Gas lamps blazed. Doormen stood at attention. Inside, the lobby hummed with late-night activity. Travelers, businessmen, safety in numbers. Theo secured a suite, 2 rooms connected by a sitting area, proper, respectable. When the door closed behind them, Evie finally allowed herself to shake. You stabbed a man, Theo said. There was something like awe in his voice. He was going to hurt me. Most women would have fainted. I am not most women. No, Theo's smile was genuine. You are not. He poured brandy with steady hands, gave her a glass. She drank. The liquor burned. Tomorrow night, Theo said, Constance and Senator Ashford will be at the governor's ball. They believe themselves victorious, believe we are running scared. We are running. We are retreating tactically. There is a difference. He swirled his own brandy. Tomorrow, before witnesses they cannot threaten, we will present evidence. Serafina will confess. Constance and Ashford will be arrested for treason, fraud, and attempted murder. Can you prove the treason charges? Federal investigators have been building their own case for months. My evidence corroborates theirs. Together, it is damning. His voice hardened. Constance's life, as she knows it, ends tomorrow night, as does Senator Ashford's career. Evie set down her glass, walked to the window. Boston spread below, a constellation of lights. I should feel guilty, she said, for destroying her. Do you, Bayadum? No, I feel free. Theo came to stand beside her. Their reflections overlapped in the dark glass. Daniel would be proud, he said quietly. Would he? I am ending his stepmother's life. Daniel hated Constance. Told me once that she poisoned his father slowly, arsenic in evening tea. He could never prove it, but he knew. Evie closed her eyes. Another crime, another theft. Her father had been healthy, then suddenly weak, dead within 6 months of marrying Constance. She killed him, Evie whispered. I believe so. That charge is harder to prove after so many years. But treason and fraud are sufficient. She will spend the rest of her life in prison. They stood together in silence. Outside, a church bell tolled 1 o'clock. The city slept. Tomorrow it would wake to scandal. I should let you rest, Theo said finally. Tomorrow will be long. He turned to leave. Evie caught his sleeve. Thank you, she said, for everything, for waiting since the war, for protecting me, for giving me choice, Wajia. His hand covered hers, warm, solid. Thank me after tomorrow, when Constance is defeated and you are truly safe. He withdrew to his own room. Evie heard the door close, the lock turn. She should sleep. Tomorrow required strength, but sleep did not come. Instead, she sat at the window watching night fade to dawn, thinking of Daniel, of 7 years of patient waiting, of a man who had loved her from a photograph and married her in reality. Theodore Bancroft was not what she expected. He was better, smarter, braver, and tomorrow together they would end Constance's tyranny forever. The sun rose slow and red. Boston woke. Church bells called the faithful. Carriages clattered. The city moved toward evening and the governor's ball, toward justice. Evie dressed in the gown the seamstress delivered at noon, emerald silk that made her eyes look green, sapphires at her throat borrowed from Mrs. Hale, hair arranged in elaborate curls. She looked like someone else, someone powerful. Theo knocked at the connecting door. May I enter? Yes. He wore evening dress, black coat, white waistcoat. He looked every inch the railroad baron. Wealthy, untouchable. He stopped when he saw her. You are beautiful, he said simply. I am armored. That too. He offered his arm. Ready. Evie took a breath, thought of broken glass and forged wills and 3 years of humiliation. Ready. The carriage waited below. As they descended the hotel steps, Evie caught sight of their reflection in the lobby mirrors. A handsome couple, elegant, powerful. No one would have guessed that 24 hours ago men had tried to kill them. The governor's ball was held at the State House. Every window blazed with light. Carriages lined Beacon Street for 3 blocks. Boston's elite ascending marble steps in silk and diamonds. Constance would be inside, believing herself safe, believing her enemies defeated. She was about to learn differently. Theo helped Evie from the carriage. His hand at her elbow was steady. Last chance to retreat, he said quietly. Evie looked up at the State House, at the light and music and power gathered inside. No retreat, she said, only victory. They climbed the steps together. The ballroom was magnificent, gold leaf and crystal, an orchestra in the gallery, hundreds of guests in their finest clothes, governors and senators and judges, the people who shaped Massachusetts. And there near the punch bowl was Constance. She wore burgundy silk, rubies at her throat. Beside her stood a silver-haired man in military dress, Senator William Ashford. They were laughing at something, playing the gracious widow and the distinguished veteran. They saw Evie and Theo enter. The laughter died. Constance's face went white, then red. Senator Ashford's expression hardened. They marched across the ballroom together. Serafina trailed helplessly behind. You, Constance hissed, you have no right to be here. Mrs. Bancroft has every right, Theo said calmly. As do I. This farce of a marriage will not stand, Senator Ashford said. His voice carried authority. Command. I have petitioned for annulment on grounds of coercion. Your petition will fail. We are legally wed. You manipulated a vulnerable young woman, the senator continued. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows nothing. Theo's voice cut like a blade. But they are about to learn a great deal. He raised his hand, a signal. From the crowd emerged 5 men. Evie recognized them. The bank president, her father's lawyer, a judge, Theo's lawyer, Mr. Walsh, and a man in federal uniform. Gentlemen, Theo said loudly, if you would be so kind. The ballroom quieted, music faded, guests turned to watch. What is this? Constance demanded. Justice, Theo said. The federal officer stepped forward. His uniform bore the insignia of Army Intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, I am Major Harrison of the United States Army. I apologize for the interruption, but I have evidence of crimes that must be addressed immediately. The crowd pressed closer. Constance looked around wildly. Senator Ashford's hand moved toward his pocket. 2 soldiers appeared behind him. He froze. Mrs. Constance Ashford, Major Harrison continued, stands accused of treason against the United States. During the war, she passed classified military intelligence to Confederate operatives, information that resulted in the deaths of Union soldiers. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This is absurd, Constance shouted. I will not stand here and be slandered. Then you may sit. Theo's voice was ice. But you will listen. Mr. Walsh opened his portfolio, drew out documents, held them high so the crowd could see. I have here evidence of Mrs. Ashford's activities, letters in code, payment receipts, testimony from Confederate agents who have turned state's evidence. He handed the papers to Major Harrison. These documents prove that Mrs. Ashford received payment for intelligence gathered through her late husband's position as military supplier. Troop movements, supply schedules, Artillery placements. The crowd erupted. Constance stumbled backward. You have no proof, she said desperately. This is fabrication. We have her accomplice, Major Harrison said quietly. He gestured. Soldiers brought forward a man in shackles, a Confederate officer. Evie recognized him from Constance's occasional visitors. Colonel Hayes of the Confederate Secret Service, Harrison said. He has confessed, named Mrs. Ashford as his primary source. Also named her co-conspirator. He turned to Senator Ashford. Senator William Ashford facilitated these exchanges, used his position in Congress to provide additional intelligence. He has been under investigation for 6 months. Senator Ashford's face went purple. This is outrageous. I am a United States Senator. You are a traitor, Harrison said simply, and you are under arrest. Soldiers moved to take Ashford's arms. He struggled. One of them produced the documents from his pocket. More coded letters, more evidence. Constance made a sound like a wounded animal. I have more, Walsh said. He pulled out the forged bank documents. Mrs. Ashford also stands accused of fraud and theft. She stole $15,000 from her stepdaughter through forged signatures. The bank president stepped forward. I can confirm these signatures are false. I did not authorize these transfers. Nor did I, said the lawyer. Richard Ashford's will was altered after his death. I did it, Serafina's voice cut through the noise. I witnessed the forgery. Mother forced me, threatened to disinherit me if I refused. The ballroom erupted. Constance whirled on her daughter. You ungrateful. I am sorry, Mother, but I cannot lie anymore. Not about the money, not about the treason, not about Father's death. Silence fell like a hammer. What did you say? The governor stepped forward. Serafina's voice trembled, but held. Mother poisoned my stepfather. Richard Ashford. Arsenic in his evening tea. I found the bottle hidden in her room. Daniel knew. He tried to prove it. That is why she had him. She stopped, looked at Evie with anguished eyes. I think she had him killed. At Gettysburg, I think she sent intelligence that put his regiment in danger. The accusation hung in the air. Constance's composure shattered completely. No, this is lies, all lies. Guards, the governor said quietly. Soldiers took Constance's arms. She struggled, screamed. You cannot do this. I am a respected woman. I have done nothing. But the evidence was overwhelming. The crowd had turned. Boston society watched in horrified fascination as one of their own was revealed as a traitor and murderer. Senator Ashford was already in chains. He said nothing, simply stared ahead with the expression of a man watching his world collapse. Miss Ashford, Major Harrison said formally, you are under arrest for treason against the United States, fraud, theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. Senator Ashford, you are under arrest for treason and conspiracy. No. Constance fought the soldiers. This is a mistake. I demand to speak to my lawyer. You will have that opportunity, Harrison said, at your court-martial. They dragged her toward the door. The crowd parted. Whispers became shouts. Constance's screams echoed through the ballroom. Then she was gone. Senator Ashford followed in silence. The ballroom remained frozen. Evie stood in the center of the crowd. Every eye on her, the stolen daughter, the avenged victim, the woman married to the railroad baron who had engineered this entire revelation. The governor approached, an elderly man with kind eyes. Mrs. Bancroft, he said gently, I am deeply sorry for what you endured, and I am grateful for the evidence you and your husband provided. Traitors must face justice. Thank you, Your Excellency. He withdrew. The crowd remained, staring, judging. Then someone began to applaud, one person, then two, then 10, then the entire ballroom erupted in applause. For her, for justice, for truth revealed. Evie looked at Theo. He was smiling, not the cold smile of strategy, the genuine smile of victory shared. He offered his hand. She took it. Together they walked through the applauding crowd, out of the ballroom, down the marble steps, into the cool night air. The carriage waited. Theo helped her inside. As they rolled away from the State House, Evie finally allowed herself to breathe. It is done, she said. It is done, Theo agreed. What happens now? Now. He took her hand. Now we begin. Begin what? The rest of our lives. Evie looked at their joined hands, at the gold band on her finger, at the man who had waited since the war to save her. 1 year, she said softly. You promised me 1 year to decide. I did. She met his eyes. I do not need a year. His breath caught. Evie, I choose you. I choose this. I choose us. For a moment, Theo could not speak. Then he pulled her close, kissed her properly for the first time. Not the chaste kiss of a wedding ceremony, a real kiss, deep and sure and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Are you certain? He asked. I have never been more certain of anything. The carriage turned onto Commonwealth Avenue. The mansion rose ahead. Home. Safe. Theirs. Tomorrow there would be trials, testimony, Constance's reckoning. But tonight there was only this. Two people who had found each other across 7 years of war and loss and patient waiting. The carriage stopped. Theo helped Evie down. Together they walked into Bancroft Manor, into their future, into the life they would build together. Behind them, Boston slept. Ahead, morning waited. And for the first time in 3 years, Genevieve Bancroft was not afraid. The Suffolk County Courthouse rose from Pemberton Square like a temple to justice. 6 granite columns, steps worn smooth by decades of petitioners seeking truth. Above the entrance, carved words proclaimed equal protection under law. Evie climbed those steps on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the governor's ball. April had given way to May. The city smelled of apple blossoms and river water. Theo walked beside her. His hand at her elbow was steady. Behind them came Mr. Walsh, carrying 2 leather cases stuffed with evidence. Serafina followed last, pale but resolute in gray silk. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled. People stood 3 deep along the walls. Boston society had turned out to witness Constance Ashford's fall. This was a military tribunal. Treason charges took precedence over civilian crimes. 3 Army colonels sat as judges. The American flag hung behind them. Somber. Final. Evie took her seat in the front row. Across the aisle, Constance sat between 2 lawyers. Her burgundy dress was expensive, her spine rigid, but her hands twisted in her lap, betraying fear beneath the composure. Beside her, Senator William Ashford sat in chains. His silver hair was disheveled, his military bearing broken. He looked 10 years older than he had at the ball. Their eyes met. Constance's gaze held pure hatred. Evie looked away first, not from fear, from indifference. Constance no longer mattered. The bailiff stood. All rise for the tribunal. The 3 colonels entered, old men with hard eyes and chests full of medals. They had fought in the war, lost friends to Confederate bullets. They would not be sympathetic to traitors. They settled into their chairs. Be seated. The center colonel's voice carried despite its quietness. We are here in the matter of the United States versus Constance Marie Ashford and William Henry Ashford. The charges are treason, conspiracy, and espionage during time of war. He looked at the defendants. You stand accused of providing classified military intelligence to Confederate forces between 1862 and 1865. Intelligence that resulted in Union casualties. How do you plead? Constance's lawyer stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. My client maintains complete innocence. This is a vendetta orchestrated by her stepdaughter and that woman's opportunistic husband. Senator Ashford's lawyer rose as well. My client also pleads not guilty. He is a decorated veteran. His loyalty is beyond question. The center colonel's expression did not change. Sit down. The tribunal will hear evidence. Major Harrison stood. He wore full-dress uniform. Every button gleamed. The United States will prove that Mrs. Ashford systematically passed Union intelligence to Confederate agents from 1862 until the war's end. We will prove that Senator Ashford facilitated these exchanges using his congressional position. He turned to face the courtroom. We will prove this through testimony, documentation, and the confession of Confederate operatives who have turned state's evidence in exchange for clemency. The first witness was Confederate Colonel Hayes. He had been held in military prison since his capture. The tribunal granted him limited immunity in exchange for testimony. He took the stand, refused to look at Constance. Colonel Hayes, Harrison began, you served in the Confederate Secret Service. Yes, sir. Describe your duties. Intelligence gathering, recruiting Northern sympathizers, coordinating espionage activities in Union territory. Did you recruit Mrs. Constance Ashford? Hayes hesitated, then nodded. Yes. When summer of 1862, she approached us through intermediaries, offered to provide intelligence in exchange for payment. The courtroom murmured. The colonels leaned forward. Why did she approach you? Harrison asked. She was in debt. Her husband's business was failing. She needed money. Hayes's voice was flat. She also hated the Union, thought Lincoln was a tyrant. The Confederacy offered her both ideology and coin. What intelligence did she provide? Troop movements, supply schedules, artillery placements. Her husband, Richard Ashford, was a military supplier. He had access to sensitive information. She copied documents, passed them through dead drops. Harrison pulled out a stack of papers. Are these the documents she provided? Hayes examined them. Yes. How much was she paid? $5,000 over 3 years. $5,000. Paid in Confederate script and Northern gold. Blood money. Did this intelligence result in Union casualties? Hayes's jaw tightened. Yes. The information about the supply convoy to Chancellorsville allowed our forces to ambush it. 37 Union soldiers died. Evie's breath caught. 37 men. Dead because Constance wanted money. What about Gettysburg? Harrison asked quietly. Hayes closed his eyes. She provided intelligence about the 20th Massachusetts Regiment's position. Said they would be reinforcing Cemetery Ridge on July 2nd. We adjusted our attack accordingly. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Daniel's regiment, the 20th Massachusetts, July 2nd, 1863, the day he died. Evie gripped the edge of her seat. Theo's hand found hers, squeezed gently. Did Mrs. Ashford know her stepson was in that regiment? Harrison asked. Yes, she mentioned it specifically. Said, Hayes swallowed hard. Said she was doing the Confederacy a favor, eliminating a troublesome boy who was investigating her activities. Gasps. Shouts. The gavel cracked. Constance lunged from her chair. Lies, all lies. The guards restrained her. She was screaming now, incoherent, desperate. The tribunal called a recess. During the break, Serafina approached Evie. Her face was white. I did not know, she whispered. About Daniel. I swear I did not know I believe you. Evie's voice was steady. You were a child. You are not responsible for her crimes. But I helped her forge documents. Under duress. You were threatened, manipulated. Evie took her stepsister's hands. You came forward. That took courage. Serafina's eyes filled. Thank you. The tribunal reconvened. The next witness was the bank president. Mr. Henderson detailed the forged signatures, the stolen inheritance, every fraudulent transaction. Then came her father's lawyer. Old Mr. Jameson testified about Richard Ashford's original will, how he had wanted to protect Evie, how Constance had altered everything after his death. Did Mr. Ashford ever express fear of his wife? Harrison asked. Jameson hesitated, then nodded. 3 weeks before he died, Richard came to my office. He was weak, shaking. He said, if anything happens to me, watch Constance. She is not what she seems. Did you investigate? I tried, but Richard died before I could gather evidence, and Constance moved quickly to consolidate control. The evidence mounted, document after document, testimony after testimony. The case against Constance and Senator Ashford became insurmountable. Finally, Serafina took the stand. She wore gray, no jewelry. Her hands trembled as she took the oath. Harrison's tone was gentle. Miss Ashford, you witnessed your mother forge documents. Yes. Tell the tribunal what you saw. Serafina drew a breath. Then she spoke. About watching Constance practice Richard Ashford's signature. About being forced to witness the forged transfers. About learning of the treason and being threatened into silence. Did you ever see your mother with Confederate agents? Harrison asked. Once, summer of 1864. A man came to the house late at night. Mother sent me to my room, but I watched from the stairs. She gave him papers. He gave her a bag of gold coins. Did she say anything? She said, this is the last time. The war is nearly over. After this, I want no contact. Serafina's voice broke. The man said, you helped us kill a lot of Yankees, Mrs. Ashford. We're grateful. The tribunal conferred quietly. Then the center colonel looked at Constance. Mrs. Ashford, do you wish to testify in your own defense? Constance stood. Her lawyers tried to stop her. She shook them off. I did what I had to do, she said. Her voice was cold, unrepentant. Richard was weak. His business was failing. I needed to secure my future, Serafina's future. So you betrayed your country? The colonel asked. I served my beliefs. The Confederacy was right. The Union was tyranny. And your stepson, Daniel Ashford? Constance's mouth twisted. He was investigating me, threatening to expose everything. I gave the Confederates his regiment's position. I do not regret it. The courtroom exploded. People shouted. Some tried to rush the defendant. Guards formed a barrier. The gavel cracked repeatedly. Order, I will clear this courtroom. Silence fell gradually. The colonel looked at Constance with something beyond disgust. Horror. You admit to treason. You admit to causing the death of your own stepson. He was not my son. He was Richard's mistake. I owed him nothing. The colonel turned to Senator Ashford. And you, Senator, what is your defense? Ashford's aristocratic bearing had crumbled completely. I was trying to help end the war. Bring peace, Mom. By helping the Confederacy kill Union soldiers. I thought I believed. He could not finish. The tribunal conferred. It took less than 5 minutes. We have heard sufficient evidence, the Center Colonel said. Constance Marie Ashford, we find you guilty of treason, espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and theft. The sentence is death by hanging. Constance went white, then began screaming. Guards dragged her from the courtroom. William Henry Ashford, we find you guilty of treason and conspiracy. The sentence is 30 years imprisonment at hard labor. You will be stripped of rank, title, and pension. Ashford collapsed, simply folded into his chair. Guards lifted him, led him away. The trial was over. Justice complete and final had been served. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine felt too bright. Evie blinked against it. Serafina emerged behind them. She stood on the steps looking lost. Evie turned to her. Thank you, she said quietly, for telling the truth. It does not erase what I enabled. No, but it is a beginning. Serafina's eyes filled. I have nowhere to go. Marcus ended our engagement. Mother's house will be seized to pay debts. Evie looked at Theo. He nodded slightly. Come stay with us, Evie said, until you find your footing. I cannot. After everything You were a victim, too, in a different way, but still a victim. Evie took her stepsister's hand. Daniel would have wanted me to help you, so I will. Serafina broke down completely. Evie held her while she cried. 2 sisters, both damaged by the same woman, both trying to heal. The weeks that followed were strange. Quiet, the storm had passed. Now came the work of rebuilding. Constance's execution was scheduled for June. She would hang at dawn in the prison courtyard. Evie did not plan to attend. Justice did not require her witness. Serafina moved into Bancroft Manor, took a small room on the 3rd floor. She was quiet, helpful, desperate to atone. She worked with Mrs. Hale, helped with household accounts, made herself useful. One evening over dinner, Theo made a suggestion. I've been thinking about your father's house, he said. Evie looked up from her plate. It will be sold, to pay Constance's debts and restitution. What if it was not sold? What if it was repurposed? For what? A home for veterans. Men returning from war with nowhere to go. We could renovate, create housing, provide medical care. Evie's breath caught. A veteran's home, named after Daniel, a memorial, and a practical good. The idea took root immediately. Daniel would have loved it, using their father's house, the place where Evie had suffered, to help men who had suffered as Daniel had. Yes, she said, absolutely yes. Planning consumed the summer. Architects were hired. The house was gutted, renovated, expanded. 30 beds, a dining hall, medical facilities, gardens for men who found peace in growing things. Serafina threw herself into the project. She organized supplies, recruited volunteer nurses, created schedules. This is what I should have been doing all along, she told Evie one afternoon. They were painting walls in what would become the library, something useful, instead of shopping and dancing. You were taught to do those things, Evie said gently. You are teaching yourself to do better. That takes courage. By September, the Daniel Ashford Home for Veterans was ready. The opening ceremony was scheduled for the last Saturday of the month. Invitations went to everyone who had witnessed Constance's trial. A deliberate choice. Let them see what good had come from evil. The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and cool. Autumn painted the trees gold and crimson. Evie stood in her bedroom looking at the dress Mrs. Hale had laid out. Deep blue silk, simple but elegant, Daniel's favorite color. She dressed carefully, pinned her hair, looked at herself in the mirror. Something was different. She looked the same, but felt changed, stronger, more certain. Her hand drifted to her stomach, pressed gently against the almost imperceptible swell hidden by the dress. She had suspected for 3 weeks, confirmed it with a doctor 5 days ago. She had not told Theo yet, wanted to wait for the right moment. Today felt right. A knock at the door. "Come in." Theo entered. He wore a dark suit, blue cravat that matched her dress. He stopped when he saw her. "You are beautiful," he said. "You always say that." "It is always true." She crossed to him, straightened his already perfect cravat just to have a reason to touch him. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes. Are you?" "I am nervous. Public speaking is not my strength." "You will be fine. You are honoring your friend. The words will come." They went downstairs together. Serafina waited in the entrance hall. She wore lavender. Her hair was pulled back simply. She looked older than she had 6 months ago. Steadier. "The carriages are ready," she said. The ride to the veterans' home was short. The house looked transformed. Fresh paint, new shutters, a sign above the door, Daniel Ashford Home. Already people were gathering. Veterans in their old uniforms, families, city officials, even the governor. Evie stepped from the carriage, looked up at the house where she had been a servant, where Constance had humiliated her, where her father had died. Now it would save lives. Housebroken men, give them dignity. Daniel would have approved. The ceremony began at noon. Chairs had been set up on the front lawn. A small platform held a podium draped in bunting. The governor spoke first, praised the vision of Theodore and Genevieve Bancroft, honored Daniel's sacrifice, condemned the treason that had killed him. Then Theo stood, walked to the podium, looked out at the crowd. For a moment he said nothing, just stood with the autumn sun bright on his face. Then he began. "I met Daniel Ashford in the winter of 1863 at a Union camp outside Washington. I was a major then, recently promoted. Daniel was a sergeant, already a veteran of Bull Run and Antietam." His voice carried clearly, strong, certain. "We became friends, shared a tent, talked through the long nights about home, about the world we wanted to build after the war." He paused. Daniel spoke of his sister constantly. Showed me her daguerreotype, said, "This is Evie. When the war ends, I'm going to make sure she never suffers again." Evie felt tears prick her eyes. 6 months later at Gettysburg, Daniel saved my life. I was shot through the shoulder. Fell. Expected to die there among the wheat and the bodies. Veterans nodded. They knew that kind of courage. Had shown it themselves. "Daniel carried me 2 miles through enemy fire. Stayed with me through field surgery. Made certain I survived." Theo's voice strengthened. "Before he died, he made me promise 2 things. First, protect Evie. Second, remember the men who did not come home." He looked out at the crowd. "This home honors both promises. It protects those who protected us. It remembers those who cannot remember themselves." He gestured to the building behind him. 30 men will live here, receive medical care, learn trades, find purpose after war has taken everything else." His voice roughened with emotion. "This is Daniel's legacy, and it will endure long after we are gone." Applause rippled through the crowd, quiet at first, then building. Veterans stood, saluted, honored their fallen brother. Theo stepped back from the podium. Evie rose, joined him on the platform. Together they cut the ribbon. The Daniel Ashford Home for Veterans was officially open. The crowd moved inside, toured the facilities, met the staff. The first veterans had already moved in. 3 men who had been living on the streets. Now they had beds, food, hope. Evie walked through rooms she had once cleaned as a servant. Now they were bright, welcoming, filled with men who needed them. In what had been Constance's drawing room, a veteran with one leg sat reading. He looked up when Evie entered. "Ma'am," he said, "I want to thank you for this place." "Thank my brother," Evie replied. "This is his gift, not mine." "Well, wherever he is, I hope he knows what a fine thing this is." Evie smiled. "I think he does." The day stretched long and golden. As evening approached, guests began to depart. Serafina stayed behind to help staff settle the new residents. I will be home late, she told Evie. There is much to organize. Take your time, Evie said. This is your work now. Do it well. Serafina hugged her, a real embrace, sisterly and warm. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me a second chance. We all deserve second chances. Theo and Evie rode home through twilight. The city was quiet, peaceful. At the mansion, they dismissed the staff early, climbed the stairs together. In their bedroom, Evie turned to her husband. There is something I need to tell you. Concern flickered in his eyes. What is it? She took his hand, placed it on her stomach. I am pregnant. For 3 heartbeats, Theo did not move. Then his expression transformed. Wonder, joy, something deeper than either. Are you certain? The doctor confirmed it 5 days ago. 5 days? Why did you wait to tell me? I wanted the right moment. She smiled. Today felt right. Opening Daniel's home, beginning something new. Theo pulled her close. She felt him tremble slightly. I never thought, his voice roughened. After waiting since the war, I never imagined this much happiness. Neither did I. They stood together as darkness fell outside. 2 people who had found each other against impossible odds. Building a life. Building a legacy. Daniel would have been an uncle, Theo said quietly. He will be, in spirit. They held each other as stars emerged, as the city settled into night, as the future they had fought for became the present they lived. Tomorrow would bring challenges. The veteran's home would require constant attention. Serafina would need guidance as she found her new purpose. A child would arrive in spring, but tonight there was only this: peace, safety, love earned through patience. 6 months ago, Evie had been invisible, powerless, humiliated before 200 witnesses. Now she stood in her own home, wife to a man who had waited since the war to love her, mother to a child who would never know hunger or cruelty, founder of a home that would save lives for generations. The transformation was complete. 3 weeks later, Evie returned to the veteran's home for the monthly review. Serafina met her at the door with a report. Occupancy, medical needs, supply requests. They walked through the building together, checking each room, greeting each resident. In the library, Evie paused. A new portrait hung above the mantel. Daniel in his uniform, young, smiling. The way she remembered him before war changed everything. Below the portrait, a bronze plaque read, Daniel Ashford, 1840 to 1863. He saved the living so they might save others. Evie touched the plaque, felt the cool metal beneath her fingers. We did it, Daniel, she whispered. We kept your promise. Outside, veterans gathered in the garden. Some tended vegetables, others sat in autumn sunshine. A one-armed man taught a blinded soldier to identify plants by touch and scent. Evie watched through the window. This was Daniel's true memorial, not marble, not bronze, living men given second chances. Serafina appeared beside her. Next month we can house 10 more, she said. Mr. Bancroft has secured additional funding. Good, there are so many who need help. There will always be more who need help, but we help who we can. They stood together, 2 sisters, one by blood, one by choice, both committed to the work. A carriage arrived. Theo emerged. He had been meeting with federal prosecutors about Constance's execution, but he had promised to collect Evie at 3 o'clock. He entered the building, found them in the library. Ready, he asked. Almost. Evie took one last look at Daniel's portrait. Yes, ready. They walked out together, past rooms filled with healing men, past gardens growing food and hope, past the sign that bore Daniel's name. At the carriage, Evie paused, looked back at the house. It had been her prison once, Constance's domain, the place where she had been invisible. Now it was salvation. Daniel's legacy, her gift to the future. The transformation was complete, and it was permanent. Theo helped her into the carriage. His hand lingered on hers. Are you well? He asked quietly. She knew what he meant. The pregnancy, the fatigue that came with creating life. I am perfect, she said, and she was. The carriage rolled away from the Daniel Ashford home, toward Bancroft Manor, toward the nursery being prepared on the 3rd floor, toward a future built on sacrifice and patience and love that had waited since the war to be claimed. Behind them, the home filled with purpose, Veterans found healing. Serafina found redemption. Daniel's memory found eternal life in the men he saved through Evie's courage. Ahead, a child grew. A legacy continued. A family expanded. And in a federal prison, Constance Ashford sat in darkness, waiting for dawn, waiting for the gallows, waiting for the justice she had earned through treason and murder. The woman who had made Evie invisible would soon cease to exist at all. Justice, complete, poetic, final. The carriage turned onto Commonwealth Avenue. Gas lamps flickered to life as evening fell. The mansion appeared, windows blazing with welcome light. Home. Theo handed Evie down. They climbed the steps together. Mrs. Hale met them at the door. "Dinner will be ready in an hour, ma'am. Will you rest before—" "Yes, thank you." They climbed to their bedroom. The fire was already lit. The room glowed gold and warm. Evie stood at the window, looked out at Boston spreading dark and vast below. Theo came to stand beside her. His arms slid around her waist. His hand rested gently on the small swell of their child. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I am thinking about the girl I was, 6 months ago, serving drinks at Serafina's engagement party, bleeding on marble, believing myself worthless. And now I know better. I was never worthless. I was simply waiting." "For what?" She turned to look at him. This man who had seen her when no one else did, who had waited since the war to love her, who had given her justice and freedom and hope. "For you," she said simply. He kissed her, gentle, sure, a promise renewed. Outside, stars emerged. The city settled into night. Tomorrow would bring challenges, work, growth. But tonight there was only peace. And the certain knowledge that Genevieve Bancroft had never been invisible. She had simply been waiting for someone who knew how to see. And he had waited too. Across 7 years in a war and an ocean of patience. Now they had found each other, built something lasting, created legacy from suffering. The promise was kept. The circle was complete. And the story that began with humiliation ended with honor, as all good stories should.